Hi, nice to see you. Um, my name is Mietta Lennes. I come from the Language Bank of Finland, and this is work we did together with Dieckmann, Matthiesen, Tommi Jauhiainen, Jussi Piitulainen, and Krister Lindén. So I'm going to talk about data citation instructions that we provide at the Language Bank of Finland. And this is the website of the Language Bank where you can find all the corporate tools and the support services of the Language Bank. So this is a collection of services basically by FIN-CLARIN. All the corpora, the resources that are available, curated at the Language Bank of Finland are listed on this list of corpora page. So you can find information about the individual resources. And this information actually comes from an internal resource database that we maintain. So the page is dynamically created when you open the page. And the page also contains the citation links. So by clicking on the double quote, you find a citation instruction for a given resource. So the resources may come in different versions, variants, and they may have different licenses even within an individual resource group. So that's why every resource needs instructions of its own. So here's an example of a reference to a resource. So you see it looks pretty familiar. This is, follows the data site principles, and it also looks quite similar, if not identical, to that one that's provided by DSpace, for example, by Lindén and others. So it's a regular kind of citation for data, but there are details that actually are not trivial, even though you think they are. Why are we using data citations in the first place? Well, it's not sufficient to refer to a published article that describes a resource, for example, because the resource may move to a different place. There might be new versions coming up or different details that need to be changed regarding that resource. There might be additional documentation that is needed, for example. So this is why it's not enough to have a paper and just refer to the paper. So a citation is actually necessary, and according to the FAIR principles, we should be able to identify and locate and reuse the data set. So it's important to have sufficient information so that you can actually come back to the resource and find what resource was actually used for a particular piece of research. So it's used for provenance information. And another reason is, of course, to provide scientific merit for those who actually went through the trouble of collecting the resource. There might also be legal reasons if you use a license that requires attribution, then you should have some sort of reference to the source. But it may not be as complicated. That's required. But anyways, some kind of reference is needed. So we should also take into account that these data citations, the instances of data citations that you find in publications, these might actually be exploited or are utilized in various ways. First, that one that comes to mind is tracking down the use of a resource. So how was a particular resource used? It would be nice to be able to search for the resource by its persistent identifier, for example, and see what kind of publications were actually created using that resource. Researchers might want to just find collaboration partners, so it might be nice to see who made the resource. And another thing is, of course, there's money involved because funders might be interested in distributing money to us on the basis of how many resources we published and how well they were used and so forth. But this is not simple because, especially in the SSH fields, we can publish, different versions and variants and parts and combinations and sliced and diced and all kinds of variants of the same content, basically. And we can enrich the data in various ways. And so it's difficult to track who contributed how much and to put a number on this. It's very difficult. So we have to be careful there. So this is basically the skeleton of citation instruction. So we have the creators or the so-called authors of the resource, those people who collected it. There's the title, and in the language bank we decided to add the version number to the title because it's actually always related to the same identifier, so it's better used there if there is a version. There's a publication year, there's a type of the resource, and there's a publisher, which in this case is Kielipankki, the Language Bank of Finland, and there's a persistent identifier. So let's go through these quickly. The creators or authors, if you will, we need an ordered list of the persons and or the organizations who were responsible for collecting the resource or organizing it. And this might not be the same as the rightful holders, for example, so we need to do some digging to actually define this. So to not to attribute the wrong people, it is a good practice to explicitly agree this with the resource depositors so that they can actually define who should be cited. And we, it's standard practice in the language bank nowadays that we make a deposition agreement with every depositor so that these things are defined in the agreement already. And it's also, we should note that it's not practical to include all the creators and authors of the previous versions of that resource, or if the resource is a combination of other resources, then we can't just start listing the authors and creators of all the content. So this is why we put some of the information in the metadata record instead. So the metadata record can have relations to other resources that it's related to. The publication year is also a nice thing. It's not we decided to use the date when the actual resource version was originally published in the language bank for the first time, because that is the date that we know we have control over the data set since then, and it might have been different before that. So this is why we select this particular date, and it's easier to define. The original date of publication is more difficult to define since the data might contain other previous resources, a big combination of many resources. So this is the clearest way. And the citation generator also adds the text forthcoming if in case the publication year is missing in our internal database, so that researchers can use the citation instruction even before the data is actually available. So they can use it to, for example, report to funders and so forth, mention it in their publications already. And the title and version, we need to have it localized in Finnish and English, and it should also be agreed with the depositor. And it's important to encourage the depositor to use that very specific title of that resource in their own publications, so that we would not start to diverge in that respect. And we add the version number of the resource or some reference of the variant in the title as well. Then we add the publisher, and we decided just to use Kielipankki all the time because we happen to, we control all the resources that are hosted by us, and we curate them, and we actually curate also the metadata. But it's like a publisher of a book. They kind of take care of printing and distributing the resource, and the actual creators and authors don't have to worry about that. So this is why the publisher is good to mention. Yes. And then we have the persistent identifier, and in the language bank it's always a URN, but actually we do have handles as a backup system. So in case URNs stop working for some reason, we can switch to handles, and which is a nice feature. And we also made the decision that the PID always in the citation instruction, the PID always points to the metadata record. So this is better to support the life cycle of the research data set. So, for example, we can provide the relations to other resources via the metadata record. And if the data needs to be removed, we can create a tombstone page and direct the data set location there. And it's also important important practice for us not to provide PIDs for resources that are not hosted by us, because we can't know what happens to those resources, and it's really annoying to find resources that have several PIDs in various locations, and you can't really tell which one is the original, and so it's important to keep track of this and not to create PIDs just for the sake of it. So here's the citation instruction again, and there was also the resource type, which I didn't discuss in detail, but that's always a data set for the corpora in the language bank. And the citations follow an APA style, and the version info is in the title, so this is just information about generating the actual instruction. And we also decided to add a link to the Google Scholar search with that particular persistent identifier and with the resource title, so you can at least try to locate some citations of that resource. And now the citation instructions are generated from the internal resource database, but we would like to be able to store all the pieces of information in the metadata record. Wouldn't it be nice if we could use a central service to generate citation instructions directly from the metadata, so that we wouldn't have to, now we have parallel internal resource database and the metadata records, and we copy information manually between these two. So this is kind of tedious. So we are currently updating our SIMD schema so that it might be, offer places for this citation information, so it would be more accessible also to other repositories. So it would basically be possible if we all started using a common schema or some components in the SIMD profile that offer this information and started providing it, and we could all have these instructions in a uniform way. So, thank you. This was it.
Thank you for the presentation. I understood from the report of the board of directors that at the CLARIN level also work is done on the data citation strategy. And I was wondering, is your approach and that approach compatible, or?
Yes, in fact, I forgot to praise this great effort. So I'm under the impression that the new citation guidelines are in accord with this, so that I think we already comply. I'm hopeful that it is so. Yes, Martin confirms. He has inside information about the.
Luckily, we agree on this. Any other questions? Yes, Friedel?
Thank you for what you presented. We sometimes have requests for metadata updates. Recently in our repository, a request to change the title of an uploaded resource. How do you think that, how can that be handled, and how are citation suggestions, but also already published citations affected, and how should we as a community think about these things? Is that really a new version? What would you say about that?
We generally are reluctant to change the title of an existing resource because it might have been mentioned in various places already. So, but in some cases there might have been needs that we really have to do it. for some reason to update the resource title. Often it's just to add another additional acronym, for example, for the resource if it becomes sort of the standard reference to that particular corpus, or this kind of nicknames, for example. But it is not good to change the title after the resource has been published. So not recommended, but in case you are careful, it might be done. And if we have to modify information within the metadata record, we always add a change log of the changes that happened. So if we add or remove information, or change something, then the metadata record should at least have some mention of or note of that.